through this journey for the next hour or so. So I just want to give a couple quick bits of library business. First, I want to remind you that we have a couple great events coming up just in the next week, including we've got one called In the Country of the Kaw, exploring the watershed of the Kaw River with botanist Jim Locklear for Missouri Valley Sundays on August 10th. So you can visit kclibrary.org/events for more information. I'll make sure my mic's adjusted here. Something I may have clicked it off. All right. See if that's a little better. No, getting some head shaking no in the back. Okay. We'll continue to figure out the logistics. Just give me a moment here. We have maybe a couple people still coming in as well. Sure. I don't mind at all to use this.
That's all we're doing.
Get it going here. We've had a successful test, so we know we can do it. Okay. Try and nope, not getting it. Oh. All right, let's see. Okay, here we go. I think we're gonna use are we on that one? Okay. Can you hear me now? Okay. Can you hear me now? All right. Let me just wrap it right back from the top here real quick, because maybe a couple people did just come in. Thank you again for coming today to our conversation, Unraveling Cadejo, A Twin's Journey. My name is Craig Auge. I'm the exhibitions coordinator here at the library. And I just wanted to remind you all, just be brief this time, to say we've got a couple of really great events coming up at the library. We have events going on all the time at the library, so please do check kclibrary.org/events to see a full calendar of events, to RSVP, and to get more information. And I will just plug one that we're having another art-related event with Melanie Johnson's show on the second floor, Time and Place, where we'll be holding a kind of a drop-in drawing and collage lab. So come down for that. That'll be 1 to 3 on the 16th, Saturday the 16th. I do want to just mention too, while you're here, that, and you may have heard this already, hopefully, we're in the middle of a new strategic plan for the library, and we're looking for your input. So we have a community survey up right now, and we'd love for you to help us imagine the future of the library by taking this survey, which you can connect to via the QR code on flyers that are at the front of the library. And so please hopefully take your time to share your thoughts with us, and also feel free to take a few flyers or to copy those flyers and send out to your networks and share at your workplaces and with your friends and colleagues as well. So now we are joined today by the artist and, I think I heard it went off again. I'm gonna keep pushing through just by projecting for now, and then I'll let you adjust if I start to get really loud. You'll know it came back on. So joining me today are the artist duo and twin brother duo, Fredy Gabuardy and Francisco Gabuardy. They were born originally in Nicaragua. They moved to the U.S. Around age 11.
Yes.
And they were accepted into the prestigious magnet school New World School for the Arts in Miami, Florida. From there, they both entered into KCAI, graduating on full scholarships, I might add, graduating in 2013. Post-graduation, they were both long-term residents of what I consider the beloved former drugstore studios in Midtown Kansas City. Yep. RIP Drugstore Studios. Yes. Francisco is no stranger to collaborating, having maintained an ongoing and evolving series of collaborations with his wife, Christina Gabuardy, ranging from painting to ephemeral hair design. And they both have currently have works at the Voth Art Space right now in the Flat Files exhibition, so go over and check that out. Yes. Fredy Gabuardy has also held a Charlotte Street residency from 2013 to 2015, I believe, and is also a designer of a handcrafted sculptural line of luxury ties under the name Gabuardy. Okay. So check that Gabuardy.
Close enough.
You just blew my mind.
No,
it's funny how like, you read one thing on print and you say, okay, it makes all of a sudden it all makes sense. So welcome, guys. I'm glad to have you here. Thanks for having this great show for us and for being here to talk a little bit about it. So jumping kind of right in, like this is a collaborative show. What are the origins of this collaboration? I think we've talked a lot before, and it may be that as twin brothers, the origins of the collaboration go all the way back to the very beginning. So there's been a collaboration like from day one. But yeah, maybe tell us a little bit more. I kind of went through the bullet points of your career, but maybe a little bit more about your background and your kind of leading you towards this collaboration.
Okay, so you're talking about more how we deal with Star Cadejo, or just a little bit more about our background?
Well, yeah. How does Cadejo? How do you get to Cadejo from growing up, your experiences growing up together, and sort of your journey as individual artists? You've kind of forged your own art careers. Maybe we can start here, I guess. We know that this collaboration truly began in earnest about four years ago or so. So we actually had an exhibition that I curated at Vico Gallery about 4 years ago. And so that was maybe, I think, the first time you all had actually exhibited together. Where do we go from there? What happened after that?
Well, me and Fredy always knew that we wanted to work together. So that's something that, like, it was one of my plans, you know, like a bucket list sort of thing. And when we had Lawyer, like you were saying, that was in 2020. You sort of like got curious and asked, because we are two different artists. Usually we don't work together like this. So Craig, like he said, he got curious and he was like, have you guys ever made work together? And we're like, no. Yeah.
Why would we even think of that?
No.
By the way, you can see examples in the front of the gallery where there's one that's like a just Francisco and Fredy, just Fredy. So you can sort of see the relationships maybe that I was seeing, but that maybe you weren't seeing as much.
Yes, and speaking of that too, like the two pieces on the back, actually, the first two pieces, those are individual pieces. So they're not part of Cadejo. The first one is mine and the second one is Fredy. And those pieces were also in that show too.
Correct.
Yeah. So it ties back to 4 years ago. And so Craig, when you asked us that, going forward, right, in 2021, after we lost the drugstore studios, when I had that studio, I created a gigantic easel that I wanted to replicate when I got my home studio. So I invited Fredy to help me build it.
Don't invite me to your house.
Yeah, no, he will come up with ideas. So I invited him, and as I was building it, I was happy because I was like, okay, I'm gonna be making big painting, and my process is gonna be faster because there's two, like it's a double-sided easel, one on the front and one on the back. We finished it. And then he's like, hey, when Craig mentioned, like, have you guys ever worked together? Wouldn't it be cool if we use this to start working together? And I was like, no. I was like, no, this ruins my plans. But I was like, well, I'm kind of young, and I wanted to do this. So I was like, why wait? And so that's pretty much how we started the process. That was in back 2021, June. So.
Wow.
Yep.
And so let's go from there and talk about where did Cadejo come in as the framework, because we've sort of mentioned this a little bit in the statement, and we've talked a bit about it. I've done a little bit of my own research. There's sort of this idea, this myth of Cadejo. How does this become like the framework for this collaboration, or kind of where does that tie into your upbringing?
All right, so I can answer that for you. So for everyone who doesn't know what a Cadejo is, based on the Nicaraguan legend, a Cadejo is a supernatural spirit that appears as a ghost to is a spirit of a ghost that appears to travelers in the shape of like a dog-shaped creature, mostly at night when they're embarking on their journey. And one way to see it is one is supposed to represent darkness and the other one is supposed to represent light. So you really don't know which one you're gonna get in your journey. So you don't even know which one you have either. I think it's more for the traveler to understand, because it's very in terms of decisions. So they will, hopefully the light one will take you to a direction where like it's a good direction, and the dark one will take you to pretty much nothing good is going to come out of it.
Yeah, and in the article that you guys wrote, you guys actually mentioned the yin and the yang, and we did wanted to clarify something though.
Yes.
What makes the story of Cadejo different than the idea of the yin and the yang is that they're not supposed to collaborate with each other. If they meet, they will fight until one of them dies. So that's the big difference between the yin and the yang. Because they're not supposed to work with each other.
Would you say too there's kind of like and I think we might be getting into some of this as we talk about specific works, but like would you say that there's maybe, you say, well, you see the light version, you hope that it's going to lead you into a good direction, so that sort of tells me like there's a trickster, there's like kind of a potentially like a element that maybe they might be leading you astray at times or trying to fool you. So is that kind of a component of this?
There is, but according to the legend is if you encounter, let's say you encounter the Cadejo that represents darkness, right? If he has red eyes, you do not want to approach that Cadejo. That means he's angry and he'll probably kill you too. But if he has blue eyes, just leave him alone. You know what I mean? And same thing with the white Cadejo. If you encounter the white Cadejo with blue eyes, that's a good Cadejo. But if he has red eyes, chances are that's the black Cadejo disguising as the white Cadejo.
Yeah.
So yes.
So we're starting to sort of see like how this kind of connects to you as twins in your collaboration. But in your words, like how does that then become the through line of all these works? How does that connect with the sort of the back and forth, or the good and the bad kind of connect to how you overall, like the overall framework of how you approached the collaboration?
Well, we did the two large ones first, parentheses, and they kind of became like a journal as we were embarking in this journey. And Francisco, we sit down and we just start making a list of titles for this project. And Francisco just put Cadejo, and I was like, oh, that's such an amazing title for a journey that is going to have a lot of unknowns, because we never done this like I don't work, so I know how to do my own thing, and he knows how to do his own thing. So it was one of those things. It's like there's going to be a lot of unknowns in this journey, and I feel like Cadejo embraces that. As like you travel in this journey, you really don't know the outcome. You just know that you are going to go through something, and I just felt that that was a perfect fitting for this journey.
Yeah, you're starting this journey. You don't really know where this is going, but
No.
And to add to that, the reason why I wrote Cadejo when I did it was because so I find myself sometimes like as an artist, like I get to work on art late. Late after I go do, my responsibilities, like my job, right? So I found myself working really late at night. And sometimes like you are working on an art piece and your brain is just not collaborating with what you're seeing in front. And so it can lead you to like a good area where you're like, okay, this is great, but then you keep working, at least for me this happens, and then I end destroying the piece. So I was like, that's why I was like, the idea of like, wonder traveling late at night reminded me of that story. So that's why I wrote it first there. But then Fredy really did like
Yeah, I said it was perfect.
so it's like perfect.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then once that happened, it was like, oh, now we have something we can like kind of run with here, and and you don't really know where your mind is going to go either in that sense. Like, is it going to start leading you like to the wrong mark, or something that could
And
be a happy accident?
Yes, and it did help to also sort of like when me and Fredy, because this was not easy. Working together is not easy. Like, he has
Talk about that. Talk about that.
It's not easy.
This whole thing wasn't just all like fun and games, which we will
There
talk
were some
about.
sunny days. There were some sunny days. You know.
There was.
I'm sure your whole like life together as twin brothers has all been roses and.
Yeah, I don't know about that. No, I don't know about that. But yeah, no. So it helped us sort of like, how can I put it like this? Like realize when our egos were getting in the way, and having something like, oh, that's a good Cadejo, that's a bad Cadejo, helped us like bypass that quicker than starting to figure it out like, why am I feeling this way? Why am I know that he went on top of my beautiful mark that I worked so hard. You know what I mean?
Hey, either way, I felt the same way too.
So yes.
And it keeps it like, it sounds like it kind of keeps it in the focus on the art, and it doesn't get so personal.
Yes.
And like you can kind of keep making the work.
Yeah.
Okay, well, so speaking of fun and games, so there's a lot of gameplay in this that I think we talk about a little bit, or that people may have read a little bit about, or perceive. But each piece, like you've developed like really specific kind of rules or structures or games around each piece, and each piece has a different kind of system, right?
Yes.
There's no one that's completely the same.
No.
So, talk a little bit about that. What do we, there's a lot of gameplay elements. Like, if you want to, we can sort of jump right into the rock paper scissors. Obviously, you see that as the title, and we all know kind of rock paper scissors. We know what that's about. But how did that play out in that piece? Or
Well, so like you were saying, each piece has their set of restrictions and rules and guidelines, right? But when we were discussing the middle body of this series, because what ended up happening was when we got the big easel, me and him talked about how we're not good at beginnings. We're great at beginnings. We're bad at endings.
Yeah.
So we were like, okay, let's create the beginning and the ending. So parenthesis 1, which is this piece right here, this big one right here, and then parenthesis 2 is the one all the way on the back. They sort of function as, like I said, the beginning and the ending. And so we created those two first, and they had its own system. We did it in increments of time. And the first way we went was like recording marks. Like, I think it was like, just to give an example, it was like 5 minutes, then 10 minutes, and then as those minutes were going, we were rotating them. And then at the end, like, I think the longest was an hour. And after that, we had this information. Then we took a step back the next week, and we sort of started breaking down what was working and what was not working. So how those two were created. After that, when we were creating the main body, right, we divided the pieces between me and him. And the way we start a piece is like, he's the pilot in one of them, and then the other one, I'm the pilot. So meaning like he's gonna touch it first, and he's gonna guide the direction. And whenever he had an idea, we discussed it to make sure, like, is this something that interests both of us, you know? And so with rock, paper, scissors,
You were the one that came out with the idea.
I came out with the idea of it, but my idea was different. My idea was I wanted to, because how can I put it like this? We didn't want to create the same thing that we create in our individual studio practice. We wanted this to be different. So to do that, we had to narrow it down even more, meaning like we had to sort of eliminate a lot of things and have very minimal, so that in that way he had to get more creative to create ideas, and I did the same thing too, so in that way we were at the same level. And so when that piece we were thinking about that piece, my idea was I wanted to sort of like eliminate all the colors. I was like, the idea was you choose one color and you can do a gradient of that color or shades of that color. Then Fredy,
Well, let me jump in there real quick. All right. That is when the Dark Cadejo jumped in, and he was like, well, because this is the thing, because we did rock, paper, scissors at first to see who was going to get it first.
yeah. That's
So
true.
he got it first. And then I was like, okay, so I have two options here. He's going to pick one of those paths. So either he does a gradient or he does shapes of it. So I was like, well, let me see which one he goes. And then when he came back with the pink area, and I was like, huh. Okay, so he went for the shapes of it. And I was like, gradients. And I was like, there have to be something more than that. And I keep looking at it, and then I was like, you know what? I think I'm gonna befriend the background, because it was a color already. So I was like, how can I? Because I feel like if I do the same thing, then that could have a whole different piece. But I felt like at that point I was like, I want to be able to work with what he did, but at the same time, like I said, it was already a color in the bag. I wanted to, me personally, when I look at it, I want to remind that the background is also part of like the foreground. So it's like this connection of like the bag is as important as all the marks that I've made, because I earned those marks with rock, paper, scissors. So, so when we started making it, and I was like, I thought of like, okay, what else from grading can be added to this? And I started thinking about like, well, tones. And I was like, a color. I saw how when he applied that color was, in terms of the background, it was kind of like, it wasn't, me personally, I felt like it was not working with the background. So I was like, I need to pick a color that's closer to the background, and at the same time embrace his color. And I just picked shapes of skin colors. And I was like, because in that way, I felt like I can make a personal narrative that if I keep winning, I can push that for myself. And there was a lot of psychological battle there, believe it or not, because it got to that point that I was like, when he would get it, I was like, no, he's gonna mess with my marks.
But the thing is, like, it wasn't so much that you were gonna mess with my mark, because one of the things that he suggested too was like, he can enter my space.
Yes.
And I could not enter his mark. So, and that is important because toward the end, you know, he kept winning a lot. All right, I did not like this. I'm not gonna lie. I'll be like, okay, well, this part of the process, you know, I'm a rule follower, all right? Fredy's a rule breaker, trust me. And you will see why. But so he couldn't enter my area and I couldn't enter his. And then toward the end, I kept getting annoyed because he kept winning. And so a lot of his vision was there. And so I was like, hey, can we play one more time? And he was like, no. And I was like, come on, man. Come on, man. And then so he said, okay, well, you know the rule that I said about not entering each other's space? How about you give me some of your territory and we'll do it one more time? Mm-hmm. I lost. And so he did more than I did, okay? But there you go.
I love it.
Yeah.
So a lot of negotiation. I had the negotiation. We covered that. Okay, so now the negotiation starts. Like, we're making the rules, but you're not really, I wouldn't say even breaking the rules, but changing the rules in a sense of negotiation.
I gotta say, my years of playing Monopoly came in handy.
So another piece too that we could maybe talk a little bit about, I think, is brings in some ideas of kind of the chance element, is La Ruleta.
Yeah.
So, and for those in the room, yes, and so here
That's
we go.
La Ruleta.
Yes, La Ruleta, here with the mirror. So talk a little bit about that one. That's just kind of another example.
So this piece was the most difficult one to make, to be honest. But it's also, do you feel the same way? Like, at least for me, I don't know if you feel the same way, but it's one of the most important ones too, because this piece helped us be better with each other and helped us be better with making the rest of the pieces. So what ended up happening was, when we did this piece, the concept was transparency. And Fredy came out with that concept. And so he did like a watercolor to it to keep the roughness of the canvas. as you guys can see, there's a little bit in there.
Gone.
So I followed that, and then by the third time he got it, he destroyed that, and he went rogue. And so, and I was still following it, and I was like, that got me mad. So I was like, oh, okay, you're not following the rules. So I broke the rules, and then our egos went to war. And so we knew that that was going to happen at some point. We just didn't know which piece it was going to be, and it was like roulette. So that's why it was like a wild card every time we got it. And but it's what we love about it is, like I said, like it was about transparency, but instead they put the light into us. There was a lot of things that not only Fredy needed to work on, but I also needed to work on. Like an idea is like after we got this piece, I remember like there will be other pieces where he will do a mark, and he will push the direction of the piece to a different direction, and I would be annoyed by it. That would trigger me, and I was like, okay, take a step back, put it on the bottom, I like where I walk a lot, and just don't touch it. Just don't touch it at first, you know. And so I would do that until like certain areas and aspects of it won. And I was like, I like that. I like it. So little by little, my brain, I started to see his direction instead of me pushing what I wanted, you know. And so that's one of the reasons why we also love that piece. Can you talk about it too, Fred?
Yeah, and I think for me, it took us some, because it's like, this is the thing. Yeah, when we saw the whole thing done, part of me was like, I was not happy about it, because I felt like I said, it was we went at it, we literally went at it, we destroyed each other's mark, because that was one of the most important rules that we had, was like, we cannot destroy each other's language in this project. And in that piece we did.
Yeah.
But I think that actually makes it more important, because at the beginning, like we told, one of the biggest difference between that makes Cadejo so special is if they meet, they will kill each other until one of them is alive. That is the representation of that. So what that means is the marks that were there before, they're all dead, because our Cadejos, the light and the dark and the light met, and they just fight. And honestly, to this day, every time I see it, I feel like they didn't stop fighting. They continue fighting. And the mirror is important as well for that as well. And I don't know, for me, that was one of the pieces that it was hard to come to terms. I have a different way of being okay with it, so I would put it in a place where I cannot see it, but little by little I keep moving it forward, so it's like in my wall next to my TV, so I can look at it, and when we can start building this connection, I'm like, wow, that's a beautiful piece. So it took a while, but I think that anything else, like Francisco said, definitely was one of the pieces that I felt like hit very important points in this project, and it teaches us how to communicate better, and and just be aware of we're individuals and we're going to make different marks, but at the same time, that does not mean we cannot make this happen.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It kind of reminds me too, and it's such a technically beautiful piece, the way the mirrors are laid out, and there's sort of, you can see all these different great angles, and there's kind of like this no escaping.
Yeah.
Like the piece, there's no escaping like the reality. And I've heard you say before that this process, you were mirrors to each other.
Yep.
But that also, I think recently I heard it was sometimes this functions as mirrors. We function as mirrors to each other, and sometimes we learn to coexist.
Yeah.
Was the quote I heard recently. So presumably that the mirror maybe isn't always showing you what you want to see, or
Yep.
something to that effect. So I think that's just really interesting. This kind of infinite. So another one that kind of is sort of related to this infinite idea of the infinite and infinite possibilities. Right next to it is the piece Tape.
Yes.
Which I think is the longest this was sort of the longest running one in some ways, or I guess the most recent reveal.
Yes.
How does Tape work? This is one of my favorites.
So when we did Tape was interesting because it's one of those that gets closer to sort of like the twin language, to be honest, in my opinion, because the concept was I started that piece. So I would create a form, an idea, right, on this panel, and then I would tape it. And then along the edges, I will seal it with matte medium, so you can get, like, by the way, that's a technique. You can get super clean, sharp, perfect lines if you're ever looking for those. That's why, like some of the lines are really crisp. It's because you put matte medium next to tape, and then you paint on top of that. It gives you a clean line.
So it peels off really, really sharp.
Yeah.
Really sharp. So that was the idea, that after you do something, you tape it back, and so the other person can't see what you did at all. At all. And so when that whole piece was taped, that's the ending of it. That there's nothing more to touch. And so there were a lot of things in that Fredy did, like for 4 years. He didn't know what this piece was. I didn't know what this piece was, you know? And so to our big surprise when we untaped it, it's interesting because, like, as twins, one of the things that constantly happens to us is, let's say we are in a room and you're talking to Fredy. Fredy will ask you a question and leave. I will come back and ask you the same question. And they'll be like, oh, your brother just asked me the same question. I'm like, okay, well, I want to know my answer. You know? I'm like, okay. So with the notion of, like, something being taped, it's interesting because I can see areas where he went heavy on mark making, and they're right next to where I went heavy on mark making. It's just different. So that was something very interesting about this piece to me that was fascinating. Even, like, when he went 3D, I went 3D too. We didn't even know.
Yeah, let me jump into it real quick. No, I think, well, first of all, I'm not gonna lie, it was driving me insane not knowing what was going on.
I know, yeah.
Because this is the thing, there was two things that were going on at the same time. So the first one was all the pieces were coming to a place where, like, you can see where they were heading. But this one was like, what is happening in there? I don't know. So it got to a point that I was like, I'm not gonna lie, there was a lot of temptation just to be like, he will not know, he will not know. He's like, no. But then I was like, don't do it, you're gonna break the rules.
This is the bad Cadejo trickster element that I
know.
Yeah.
But then I was like, well, that's a good thing too, because I can push it to a really good direction, but I will be breaking the rules. So I was like, don't do it, Fredy, don't do it, you got this. So I was like, you know what, I'm gonna be just so. I'm proud to say I didn't break the rules. And it got to the point where, like, for like, we just opened it after 4 years, so we didn't know what that was until 4 years. Although I do want to pitch an idea real quick to anyone who's interested in all this, real quick. What if you make a body of artwork that can never be on tape until you die? So whoever owns your artwork, in the contract you put, it can only untape it till I'm no longer alive. So that means you can be 85, and the person who got your work will never know what you did. Only you know. So if you're interested in doing that, go for it.
Now we're getting a glimpse of the rabbit holes that we go down usually when we get together to talk. But it is interesting, yeah, because it's like, we've talked about this too. There is sort of like during the process, certainly at least, there's this idea that there's anything's possible too. Like, while on the one hand, you really are desperately wanting to see what is going on, so you can kind of know where to steer it. That the idea that there are infinite possibilities, and that this is the version that we've landed on. But, like, at any time, like, it also kind of contains, in a way, a lot of other works of art like that never were or that are somewhere in another universe or something. Anyway, this is, again, we're going off into the we said we weren't going to do this, and okay, so we did a little bit, we let out, but kind of bringing it back to, like, you guys in the process of making it, what this kind of, I think, sounds to me like is the most exercise in like a trust as well, both in not peaking, but also just in trust that you're going to be sort of heading in the same direction ultimately.
Well, that's one, like, the back end, because, like, the one of the things that we learn about is, like, we're very visual, so that helps us to push each other further as we make work. But when you don't have anything to you take away that, and you're like, well, I can't push this idea because I don't know what it is. It's one of those things that it was kind of like, I just have to have faith that he is going at it, and he's having a a good time making that area that I can't see. So I want to do the same thing. And it was interesting because like all the markers he made were different. So every time he got it, he didn't do the same mark that followed the first idea that he did. And I did the same thing as well without even talking to him. And because I added one example of that is like the white area. I taped that, and I was like, I don't want him to mess with this white area. And then he added white without even me knowing that. And I was like, oh, wow. So he was, I don't know, it was just a connection. And I believe it or not, that's when all the pieces, we have conversation for like, this area, I don't know how I feel. But when we untaped that piece, we were like, there's nothing to do. It's just great. Yeah.
Perfect. So how this connects to the idea, and I'm sure you've gotten this kind of your whole life, this idea of like that, at least like in popular, and do we have any twins here, by the way? We've got a couple of, so I know, I knew that looking out, but I was just curious, are there any more twins? So a couple of twins here. So, you know, there's this idea, at least like in popular culture and the media, you know, and that I think is maybe true on some level, but this idea of twin language, it appears in this piece, it appears in a lot of these pieces, and in your communication, how one will ask, you know, one in the same room, and you'll sort of know kind of the answer. And these popular perceptions of twins, like now having gone through that piece and others, like do you feel like that's more true or less true? Do you feel like that's true? Is there like an unspoken?
Well, this is the thing. I feel like the way I was presented to that with that idea was like it's always in a verbal kind of format, meaning like twins have their own secret language. Well, Wikipedia needs to upgrade because we also have visual.
Yeah. Yeah.
So yeah, I feel like this is a good example of like it can also that mindset can also translate in a visual language.
Absolutely.
Which that's what Francisco and I did, because when you look at it, you guys feel a different way. But me and Francisco have this is a language that, because we have two different languages. He has his own language, I have my language, but this is our own language. So if you're referring to that idea, then yes, this is a visual twin language.
Yeah.
And
you're finishing each other's sentences
Yeah.
visually.
And another thing that to me that makes this series so dear, honestly, is we are identical twins, and so my mom didn't know she was having twins, by the way.
Yeah.
Yeah. During that time there was no such a thing as an ultrasound, so it was like surprise. 5 minutes. So she loved dressing us the same when we were growing up. We're like, no. But anyways, that's a different story for another day. What also makes pieces so dear to me is that one of the difficult things for a lot of twins is separation. You know, and so which I know also twins that decided to stay together, and that's also really tough too. But to us, this body of works is also something that connects us. It's a moment that represents me and him, you know, and that aspect of that. And so, and we're just really happy to add to that, you know.
Well, that's kind of, you got to my last kind of, or one of my last questions, which is kind of getting into, you know, how you've kind of grown personally. And it sounds like there has been a lot of good interpersonal connection too within this work. Are there any other ways in which you've grown, funny or difficult or poignant ways that you feel like you've grown together as twins, as brothers?
Well, I feel like, you know, it's I can look at these pieces like as I'm gonna get older, I'm gonna be looking at this piece. So this is one of those things that I hope I will never forget, because who knows, maybe I get Alzheimer's and I forget things.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's possible. But anyway, so I hope this is one of those things I don't forget, because I feel like it's a beautiful moment that I share with him, and I feel like, you know, would it happen again? I don't know. I feel like this feels right the way it is right now.
Yeah. You had talked before about this is a document, like you said, for you, as you now in this time in this place, and to sort of have that. It's really at the core. It's a personal documentation your relationship.
Yeah.
And other areas that we have grown is like I've been, more patient, better listener, and one of the things too about me is I consider myself a symbolist. So throughout a lot of my work, there's like especially if you look at the one on the back, which is like a representation of my individual studio practice, there are symbols in there, and there's a second piece in here that I felt comfortable putting symbols, but that's patches, because for that piece, each patch was supposed to represent us, right? So I felt comfortable putting symbols in there, but I didn't want this body to be just like about me. I didn't want to get that attached. I wanted to be this about us. So, yeah, with this body of work, I can see myself, once I go back to my own individual studio practice, you will see a little bit of symbols from Cadejo. I'm taking some of these ideas, all right?
Yeah. And adding to that too, I do feel the same way. I'm probably gonna take some of those moments and bring it back to as my own personal artwork. And yeah, I feel like too, when it comes to growing art, I also learned to like listen, pay attention, don't break the rules, especially that one. And I just feel like, it's nice when you have someone who has the same level of like craziness as you, because I know like one of the things is like he is like me. I don't have an issue running out of ideas. It's the opposite. It's just selecting which one.
Yeah.
And I feel like he also matches the same thing with me. And no, it's just like I said, I can see myself borrowing some of those moments as well.
Great. Well, I think, and actually that's a kind of great timing if you'd like to go ahead and open it up if anyone has any questions from the audience or if anyone's watching online. Sophie has a microphone and she will bring that around to you, so great. Yeah.
Real quick before we get this first audience question, we do have one from a viewer online already.
Great.
There's a very sci-fi video game vibe to many of these pieces. Are you two gamers? If so, what do you play?
I play everything, even horror. I like horror games. But yeah, I think it's a fair observation. I think than anything else, I feel like art is in itself is something you take from a reality and you bring it to a different reality, so you can enjoy it as you're making it. So I feel like when you talk about video games, right, you play games that you feel like they will give you something back in return. I feel like art does that. Like if you execute, not execute, but if you are invested to the point where like you make it part of your life, then I feel like that reality can go both ways, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I think we talked a little bit about that too, where like, sometimes art to you and to me as well, I think it's kind of can be like an escape from reality.
Yes.
But also the other side of that coin is you're able to create a new reality or the reality that you want to see, or just a fantasy kind of realm. So I think gameplay provides that too. So, and I see there's like it feels like these are almost like they're not real spaces, but they are real spaces. They are like real dimensional places somehow that are like kind of outside of reality, outside of time. So I think the sci-fi thing to me is kind of stands out as well. We had one up front here.
Yeah.
Hi, thank you very much for this wonderful show. I have two questions.
Yep.
One's a little frivolous and one's more serious. I wish you would say something about your shirts, which are very representative of what you've been talking about today. And then secondly, I'm just fascinated by La Ruleta because most of your other pieces are markedly symmetrical. And yet this is markedly not symmetrical, but it has all these three-dimensional elements to it. So I'm curious as to where in your process the decision to make them three-dimensional comes about, and when you decided to put the mirrors in.
That's a great question, actually. So Fredy is naturally a builder. Fredy, he was the one that taught me how to use the wood shop. I used to be scared of like using the wood shop because I seen people get caught. You know what I mean? Anyways, I'm not gonna go into details, right? But he's the one that taught me how to be comfortable. Like there's a saying, respect the tools, but don't fear them. You know what I mean? And so, vice versa, I help him he used to use a lot of black. And I was like, I told him, do not use black, okay?
Yeah.
And he paints better now, thanks to me. I gotta take some responsibility there.
That is true. That is true.
It's interesting because that's actually a great question. Like, so this might sound, but how can I put it like this? Like, I feel like sometimes your work talks to you, right? You're making an art piece and you want this piece to look a certain way, and you just keep, you keep missing the mark over and over and over again. And sometimes you're like, okay, I'm gonna take a step back. Maybe this piece doesn't want that in there. You know what I mean? So you listen to the work. I always say it's just when you keep making the same mistake, just take a step back, you know. And so the 3D aspect enters differently because, like he said, like the way I talk to him is like, hey, you can build anything you want, so can I, but it's necessary in terms of like the subject of the piece, right? And in this one, the frame, we talked about it. We hadn't built it yet. We just talked about it, and so, and again, this piece helped a lot with our communication. So I had an idea of like I want the frame to add to the piece, you know, but still be a frame. So I came out with the idea of like designing the corners, right? And the original sketch was the mirrors were going to be flat, meaning they were going to be like L shapes tracing the piece. And it took us like about 3 days.
Yeah.
We destroyed a whole mirror in the process because we got to figure out who was better at cutting the mirrors. He has a very heavy hand. Like I was like, Fredy,
it wasn't going well.
I was like, give me that. Yeah. So I realized I was better at it, and so when we lay it flat, the effect was not correct. And so Fredy was like, playing with it, and he's like, hey, why don't we do it in an angle? Look. And he explained to me that the corners actually follow the idea of the frame inside the mirror. So it's creating like a replica of that inside the piece. And so I was like, I love it, perfect. You know, and so the other thing is like putting those mirrors inside there, oof, do not break them because you're gonna have to take all of them out and do the whole process again. Because there are literally like, we had to we had to glue and nail like a triangle on the bottom and then put it on the inside first and then sandwich the top frame, the top mirror, and then pull with the wire attached to it, pull the glue triangle so that it will like push the mirror forward and secure in place. So that's why I'm saying like, no, do not break that, please. Yeah. I am not doing that again.
Yeah.
You know, no, thank you. But yes, that's how it happens. It's at least for me, if the piece will tell me if it needs or not. But I cannot say 100% how it does happens. You know, just the piece talks. I don't know how that happens to you, Fredy.
Yeah. Well, talking about the mirror, for me it was more of like, I think it was such a great introduction to this piece because, like I said, this is the piece that both the two, me and Francisco, went the most at it. So the two Cadejos were fighting, and I felt like, well, I wanted to introduce the idea to the real world. So I feel like when you look at the mirror, you do two things. So the first one is, depending when you look at it, you look at yourself. So you become part of the Cadejo. So the Cadejo, and you're looking at it without even thinking. And the other thing is, it introduces the Cadejo to this reality. So I really like that. So to me, the mirror was like, was one of the most, it was a very important element to, not to just have a painting in the wall, but to add the extra touch of magic. So in that way, it breaks away from just being a painting and talking about that. I feel it becomes more personal to that reality that we live in. And also, I feel like it's easier for you to make connections with it because you see yourself in it, if that makes sense. About the shirts, I told him, hey man, let's go for it.
He gave it to me, so it's mine now.
Yeah.
So thank you. Hooking me up. I got a free shirt today.
That's great.
Oh,
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
I do feel that you two are two of the most fashion-forward people that I know.
Oh, thanks.
Grateful to be inspired by the various outfits I've seen through the years.
Funny thing about that is like sometimes I'm about to purchase a shirt and I call friend, I'm like, Fredy, you haven't purchased this shirt right. It's like, I've already got it, bro. I'm like, no!
Sorry. There we go again. Like, you have to check in and
I
make
had
sure
to
you're
make-
not thinking, the same thing.
I always told him, like, if you commit a crime, you gotta let me know. 'Cause I'm like, oh!
From Francisco, it's coming after you.
I also too. I think it's really fascinating to just take the moment to appreciate what goes into just making any piece of art. Like thank you for sharing the trial and error. I think it's easy for us as viewers to. Or if you're not necessarily a practitioner, to just think that it just happens. There's a lot of failure that happens along the way, and breaking of things. So thank you for sharing that. And again, just to invite, if you haven't had the moment after we're done here, to take a moment and really investigate those corners that they were mentioning, because there's truly something really magical happening where as you said, the outer part of the frame is mirroring what is
In the
showing up
inside.
in the inside, and it shocked me.
Yeah.
You saw my shock where I was like, "Did you know?" And they're like, "Yeah, of course we did." Went through all the 10 versions.
Thank you for sharing your process, the ups and the downs. Would you do it again or never again? You two going to go into separate sides of the ring, or how would it be different the next time around?
That's a fantastic question, first of all. Also, right now, all right, I hope you don't mind, but so there is, believe it or not, there is 3 Cadejos left. It's 11 pieces that we wanted to create to sort of commemorate when we came to the United States, which was the age of 11. So numbers are very important for us. So we have to finish those 3, first of all. And the reason why they're not here is because they got heavy on the process.
Yeah,
They're really heavy. So just with the time frame that we had, there was no way we were going to finish those. So we'll finish those 3. And after that, we don't know the future, to be honest. I don't want to say yes, and I don't want to say no. But as right now, after we finish those 3 Cadejos, I would say I feel like I've been fermenting a lot of my own personal desires for 4 years. So I kind of want to jump into that. So that's what I feel right now.
Well, I don't know. I feel like I really like the idea of the forever tape. So see, if somehow one day he's working with something, I'm like, Francisco, remember that time that we had that conversation?
Maybe if it's just tape 2, and that's
Exactly,
the only
yeah.
one you ever do.
You know, that's
it
what
just
I'm
can be the one thing that.
Yeah, and we don't open it till,
We never open it.
we never open it. We just right there,
Yeah.
Then I will come up with you will have to pay me in a different way too. All right. There was an idea that I suggested to him. I was like, how about we make a large piece that you can only do 2 moves or 1 move, that limited. He said no. So I'm like, I know which one he doesn't like. So if I don't like the idea,
So to answer, there is a possibility, as you can see.
Now he's convincing me.
I do like the idea of things in 2s, though. That makes sense. I mean, and again, just to reiterate for folks to get a visual on this, the parentheses 1 and 2, if I'm not mistaken, we're talking literally about an actual double-sided easel.
Yes.
That is a huge easel that actually rotates. So I just want to lock in that. It's quite something to see, and so I kind of love that idea of the rotating thing too. That's kind of a fun idea that I think could be replicated in multiple versions.
Yeah. No, it was a very interesting process too, because it's since we started with a short time of frame, it became more marks, but the more time increased, more personal it became. Those marks became, I'm just going to put a circle. No, that circle needs to mean something now. So I don't know. Like I said, to me, they're beautiful journals. Mm-hmm.
Please go bit to me.
Hi, guys.
Yes.
Well, hello.
Can you hear me all right?
Yeah.
All right. Well, first, thanks a lot. I had a brother that I was very close to, and watching you guys, you talked about mirrors a lot, and somebody said you guys held, you guys were mirrors for each other, I guess, when you said that.
Yes.
And then undoubtedly, just by agreeing to the process, you forced yourself to hold up the mirror to yourself, right?
Yep.
And you appreciate each other more. So what is there about your own personal style of work that you realized you learned in this process and said, you know what, that part of my technique or style, I'm really the badass. That's made you appreciate that about yourself even more. Something maybe a little you can share with us about that.
Well, I would say, like Francisco said, I'm a natural builder. And I think in this piece, believe it or not, I challenged myself not to touch that, because I felt like, to me, I was like, I know that if I build something, it will be something that, I don't know, I feel like when it comes to making art, if there's a chance for me to challenge myself, I would take it regardless. So sometimes I just have to be honest, like, no, if that is gonna be easy for me, then what's the point? I got it. I have to have that rush. So it's interesting because, like, on this piece, you would think that I built the bag or something like that, but I did no building whatsoever, 3D dimensional. That was Francisco. So I would say, like, and it's also really good to see the, like Francisco mentioned earlier, I was the one that helped him become okay with using tools. So I feel proud to say that, like, he's really good at it.
I think for me to answer your question too, when I look at all the work, and each piece sort of gives me a different vibe, right? I think one of the things that I appreciate a lot about myself is the process that I use. It's interesting because, how can I put it like this? I'm very technical, right? I use percentages to determine, like, how much input I want to put in a piece. Like, do I want the piece to be free, meaning I don't think about it? Or do I want the piece to have 50% of my knowledge, and the other 50 is like experimentation? That's how technical I am. Freddy's not like that. I also have peers that I ask questions. Like I do. Again, I'm very technical, so easy for me to follow rules. But it was interesting because, like, he's not like that. Fredy is more like, I always say this, like, let's say we are in a race, or we're gonna go save the princess, talking about games, right? I'm like, yo, the building, the castle is on fire. It's under attack. Let's go straight. Look, there's a straight path right there. And Fredy's like, let's go around. I'm like, no, we don't have time for that, you know?
Okay, there's dragons in there.
Yeah, he wants to explore the land, as you can see. But it was, I think to answer your point, like, a two-way. It helped me appreciate why I said those structures. But at the same time, too, it challenged me because if I wanted Fredy to exist and be Fredy, I needed to cut some of that down.
And the same goes for me too. I have to be like, like I said, it's more of like learning about your ego. I think was the hardest thing to overcome, because at that point I was like, no, if I really want to embrace what this is, I have to tell myself, you don't have full control. And that's something that was like, every time I would get a piece, not for tape. Tape was a whole different conversation on that thing, because I didn't know what was going on. So, but the other pieces were like, I was like, oh man, that mark, and I did something, and I was like, that's not working. So, but at the same time, I was like, wait a minute. If he created that mark, that means he sees a direction. And at that moment, I didn't see the direction. Sometimes his mark was acted like a vehicle or a signal of like, okay, we're gonna head that direction. At some point, hopefully I find myself in it. And it was quite fascinating to also appreciate the way he comes by making his process, the way he analyzes things, and the way he's like, I probably do 3 or 4 sketches. He has a book. And I was like, you don't need a book?
You do need a book.
So he would have so many things, and I'm like, damn, okay, it's not one of those things that I was like, am I doing enough or not doing enough? So, but at the same time, I was like, no, that's my way is different than his. So I appreciated the fact that we have these two way of making it. And when it came to this project, that sometimes was fascinating to see, and sometimes it was a challenge to overcome. So, yeah.
We have time for
one more?
one last question.
Thank you.
Last question.
This has been fascinating. Thank you all so much. Any advice for young artists in terms of collaboration or going their own path or developing their instincts?
Good question.
That's a fantastic question. For young artists, honestly, don't burn bridges, I would say. That means like when you collaborate with somebody, sometimes, things don't go how you want, but that's okay. Whoever you're working with, they're teaching you something that you could be better at, you know what I mean? So don't burn bridges. Art, just remember, art, like if you pursue the art of being a creator, you didn't choose a straight line. You choose a line that goes up, goes down, side, you know what I mean? It goes all the directions. So embrace that.
From my side, I would say, talk a lot with other people. You know what I mean? I feel like like I said, you have to, as you start getting older, it's like, and this is one of the things, when on my job, when I remember the first years I was working, I was very quiet. So I just mind my own business, try not to have conversation. And then I realized one thing, I want to be an artist. At the same time, I want to be able to talk about my work. I want to be able to listen and pay attention. And I feel like that, I was like, well, where can I practice this? So I'm lucky enough to say that I work in a place that's a public place. So if I have a bad interaction with someone, I'm not going to see that person again. Woo, you're gone. So that opportunity, but what if this is a good conversation? Like, wow, that conversation, I will remember that. I learned that, I was able to keep eye contact. I was able to make sense of what I was trying to explain. And it was such a great conversation. So I would say practice conversation, talking with other people, because I feel like if you think that magically your artwork is going to be so amazing that everything is going to line up, no, you got to put the work and you got to put the work on the skills. Yeah.
That's a great place to wrap it up, actually, and to say thank you again for being here, because I think as artists, it's just as important in moments like this for you all to hear from them their process, but for them, if I may say, to speak that out to people as well. Yes. And so it's a sort of a reciprocal relationship that we're having right now. So thank you so much for the great show and for joining us today, and thank you all for joining us as well.
Thank you for being here.
Thank you, Craig. Thank you.
And this show will be up through September 21st, so please come back and share the show with others. Thanks again.
Thank you. Thank you, guys.